Welcome back to Newsfile on Joy 99.7 FM Joy News. And we started off the whole discussion, at least we are yet to talk, but we've been hearing from President Akufo-Addo and his Ashanti regional tour, the issues that have come up. There are those who've been calling for the sacking of Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta. Is he actually made it to the top 5 excellent minister list for President Akufo-Addo? Once again, I'll go through my lists. At least I have top 4 here as well that will be joining me for this discussion. Godfred Boping is a professor of finance and economics at University of Ghana. Dr. Gyampo via Zoom is a political risk analyst and economist. I have Bradford Gyampo is a professor of political science, University of Ghana. I have Dr. Bernard Tutu-Boahing, lecturer in marketing, University of Education, Winneba, and political marketing consultant. Maybe we should test our Zoom sound and be sure. Dr. Gyampo, Dr. Tutu-Boahing, good morning and welcome to Newsfile.
Good morning. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you very much. And in the studio, the 2 professors and the latest professor as well.
Yeah. Morning.
Good morning.
Good
Welcome.
morning.
Welcome to Newsfile. So I know that we're talking about the Ashanti regional tour to start with, but I know that the 4 labor unions, the teacher unions, you're still on strike. How is it going? Have we had the response that you were looking for in terms of why we are on the strike?
No, we've not had any such response. You recall that we sent letters around that our conditions of service have been varied to our disadvantage without recourse to us. And no, who does that? If you want, for whatever reason, you want to vary the condition of service of labor to their disadvantage, you do so with consultations or in consultations with labor. This thing was not done, and unilaterally, government decided to write that some allowances that are due as should be withdrawn or something like that of the sort. And we wrote letters, petitions here and there. We wrote to National Labour Commission. National Labour Commission summoned the government side to ensure that the right thing is done, but the government side ignored the National Labour Commission. And so we decided to lay down our tools. And National Labour Commission called us. And as usual, before we went there, we knew that they would say that, look, you guys should call off your strike. And so we were prepared for them. They said that, and they asked the government side to further engage us. We've been engaging with the government side. Clearly, if you look at their posturing and their responses, they are not willing to accept our demand. We are
not because they are unreasonable demands at the
time? No. I mean,
okay.
It's something you don't. If for whatever reason you want to vary an employee's conditions of service to his or her disadvantage, you consult. You don't use that kind of buga Takashi strategy to do that. Because of what? Because today you are occupying a position of trust, or today you are in power and we are teachers. I mean, I don't understand. Regardless of the position you hold, we taught you. And so you have no right to come and bully anybody. And we are not going to allow that. And so National Labour Commission directed that, well, we should engage. I don't understand that ruling. We should engage people who are unengageable, people who are not willing. I mean, in our discussions with them, we made overtures, we made sacrifices. We even said that if for some reason, we know times are hard, we are not a bunch of irresponsible or insensitive people. We are teachers, we are parents.
That's how you come across.
No. We are parents. You have no idea the concessions that we made. We even went to the extent of telling them that if you can't pay, stop paying, but let's defer payment to a certain date. Even that one, they didn't want to budge. And then you are telling us to go engage them. Well, the National Executive Committee of the Labour Unions have met, and they've taken certain decisions. I am sure by the close of day today, those decisions will be made public.
Okay.
And the point is that we are still where we are.
Well, that's an issue that I'm sure much later we'll delve into it. But Professor Boping, I know you've made calls over the period about the finance minister's stance or his status as the finance minister. For you feel that his sacking or resignation will turn things around. You've heard the president in the Ashanti region in that interview. He actually makes the top 5 list. Excellent minister in the first term. It doesn't look like there will be a sacking. You will not get what you're asking for.
Well, good morning, and good morning to our cherished listeners and viewers. That's unfortunate. It's unfortunate because we are in crisis. If there's anything more than crisis, perhaps that's what you could use, and therefore you would expect that leadership will respond appropriately. Sometimes it matters that you sacrifice somebody so close, right? Because if the president will be mindful of what is happening, even across the investor base, home and abroad, you could see that they are already discounting the leadership of the finance minister, right? So part of leadership is to pick that right signal where you say that, okay, I've gotten to the stage where I need to trade off loyalty. I need to trade off personal interest for the common good. If this is what will do the trick, why not? Because it's done everywhere. It's done in times like this, right? And that would just be the starting point. What we are asking for is actually beyond just asking the finance minister to go. Ghana has gotten to the stage where an IMF-supported program is not enough. And all that we are doing now is just to wait for what will happen from the IMF negotiation. Come on, the IMF is not here to govern this country, right? So the necessary governance reforms that we need to initiate, and we must do that regardless of whether an IMF program is in place or not, right? Because reforms are more effective when they are bundled together and reinforce each other. Okay, so, and we'll get there. They have no moral right to ask Ghanaians to take a haircut or investors to take a haircut when they have kept their hair on. It makes no sense. And we can do the permutation and say that, look, we know Cote d'Ivoire took a decision to reduce the number of ministers from 41 to 32. What is so special about Ghana, right? We can do that and free our space rather than loading the haircuts on ordinary people who perhaps did not contribute to the mess. That's the point that we are talking about. Look, and data exists to suggest that the size of government in Ghana is negatively affecting growth. That's very clear. So some level of restructuring, some level of reshuffling and downsizing the government and looking at it also across state-owned enterprises, right? A lean government is the best response when you don't have fiscal space. And look, if you look at our own baseline, debt sustainability, we know where Ghana is. The important question is, what do you have to do in order to crawl back to a sustainable level? Is going to be painful, right? That is the stage where we are.
But for him, reshuffling, calling for a reshuffling for reshuffling's sake, is not the way to go for him.
It's not for recycling's sake. There's an end to that. You just look at what look at the reaction from the market, the CD, okay, the free fall, right? And if you are looking at it, that look, and it doesn't suggest that merely checking the box that we have a program in place, the CD will just resurrect its work. That comes with confidence. You need to start that. Okay, so confidence is wounded, faith in the government is impaired. You need to do something. It's not like just doing it for the sake of it. We've been talking about this thing right from the second term of the president. You made a case that size matters, given the enormity of the challenges that you inherited, and therefore more hands will be needful. But clearly, after the first term, you could see that size really didn't make a significant difference. So in your second term, probably the people who supported you made their political investment. 4 years of political returns probably is enough. And said that, guys, this is a time to leave a legacy. If you are not thinking about legacy right now, when do you want to do that? Because where we are now, 4 years, if you look at the debt sustainability, if you want to crawl back and say you look at it from the fiscal adjustment pathway, you are looking at recording a primary surplus of about 8% and more within the next 4 years. That's going to be painful. That will be hard for anybody to take. And the signal already has been sent by labor unions across the different occupational groups. That is the challenge with IMF itself. That's the challenge with our development partners. To what extent would Ghanaians embrace this austerity? Right? So there's one level saying that this is what we want to do. There's another level saying that it's going to be accepted. How do you package it in a way that it will not cause social unrest, right, and disintegrate society? Because we are looking at implementing an austerity in an environment where inflation has already dwarfed returns on people's investment, right? Wages have failed to track surge in prices, right? Inflation has practically dwarfed the purchasing power of households, right? Across all the layers, you see inflationary pressures that have become entrenched and practically undermining the credibility built around Bank of Ghana's price stability objective. You look at all these things and you just can't say we are waiting for an IMF program.
Okay, well, that's for the second part where we would delve in deeper into this IMF situation. But the times that we are in and the posturing of the president in terms of that interview, the things that he said in the interview when it comes to the calls that people have made in the times that we are in, mentioning that there's a lot that has been done and those detractors will be put to shame, amongst others. And the fact that just calling for reshuffle is not just the way to go. But, Prof, the issue about the posturing, the tone, do you think that the president went according to script?
Well, I watched and I listened to him. You know, there are many challenges that would have to be tackled in developing countries. Some of these challenges are institutionalized negative norms that would have to be dismantled. And they include, for instance, the fight against fighting galamsey, okay, ridding the city of hawkers, dismantling or destroying buildings that have been built on waterways, etc., etc. I mean, these things are challenges that we tend to impose on ourselves. In trying to fix these challenges, you would receive threats from voters and from people. When you are doing the right thing in fixing these challenges and you receive threats, you are expected to be bold, to look into the people's face and to tell them that your threats do not unfaze me. And that's the reason why I was happy that in his first term, when he was fighting galamsey, the president said, I'm prepared to put my presidency on the line. If you ask the Greater Accra Regional Minister, he's faced several threats in his bid to get the people of Medina and Adenta to use the footbridge and all that. I mean, there were threats, but he could look into their face boldly and tell them that, look, your threats do not unsettle me, they don't unfaze me. That is, so at a certain point in time, leadership would have to be very bold and call the bluff of people who would want to stampede them with threats of voting
this is one of
against
the
them.
moments?
No, voting against them. Should they do the right thing? But you do not call the bluff of voters when they are disappointed. You cannot say your threats do not unfaze me when clearly things that were promised to be done have not been done in a manner that can tangibly be felt. You do not call the bluff of those who enthroned you when clearly they are living in a certain economic miserization. You don't do that because if you do that, they get disappointed. In times of crisis, the one who is expected to steer us out of that crisis is always listened to. And as people listen to, they expect you to sound presidential, not debative or combative. They expect you to sound soothing and conciliatory. They expect you to say certain words that will bring all of us together, rally all of us behind you. You see, we cannot tackle our challenges without all of us coming together to appreciate the challenges that confront us and say, well, we offer support. So you don't have to make any comments like that people would interpret as divisive or combative and all that. So I was quite surprised when the president did that. And unfortunately, to my mind, he fell for the trap of arrogance that is oftentimes set by the near exercise of unbridled power. Okay, Lord Acton said, power corrupts, absolute power corrupts, absolutely. And so if a president has exercised power for a long time without countervailing mechanisms that check the exercise of power, it gets into your head. And so sometimes when you are pushed a little, you may fall for the trap of arrogance that is set by the near unbridled exercise of power. And it satisfies what he did. Yes, truly, he tried to explain, went on to say that whatever would have to be done, he would do. But if you still look at the tone, that he used in going about it, it satisfied Akan saying that, you see, Abuano, if you didn't chena ni sunko, and ejano so ni sunko. I said, if the trap catches a rat, it cries differently from when it is released and all that. So I was a bit saddened. And you see, it also has, that statement also has the potency to douse or undermine the future electoral fortunes of the party that brought him into office. Because there is an impression, you see, he is the head of the party now, and there's an impression that, look, smacking of some dead goat syndrome. You know how dead goat syndrome worked against John Mahama and his party. Okay, so if such utterances are not tamed, if they are not guarded, and they keep recurring, then in my view, the party may have to consider rescuing itself from the government or delinking itself from the government, because the exit of a president should not spell political doom for the party that birthed the presidency.
Is that possible?
Well, there is a party that keeps saying they want to break the 8. And if you want to break the 8, and there are utterances coming from the head of the party that shows that, well, we don't care, we are almost on our way out. And so whatever threats you issue do not unfaze me. I mean, it would have a certain effect on the psyche of voters. Already I've heard that those, the community that within which the president said this. I mean, yes, they've issued a statement that they would take a second look at their relationship with the party and all that. And so the party that is interested in breaking the 8 must not sit down, because as for the president, he is on his way out. And so they must think about, if this continues, maybe his advisors would speak to him and then make sure that next time, even if he has to speak extempore, he would have certain blueprints that would guide the way and manner he would have to speak. This is not a president Akufo-Addo that I know. I mean, we know the president as somebody coming into our home to talk about, to address us as fellow Ghanaians. Okay, when in the days of fellow Ghanaians, he sounded so presidential, and just his words and declarations carried a certain force of law. Don't do this, don't do that, and people obeyed. Okay, and so in times of crisis, we are in crisis. You expect the president, you see, the minimum that he can do is to come into our homes again and to address us in that sober tone, so that we are all at ease with ourselves. We all appreciate the challenges that we face. And then you speak to us in a manner that makes us feel like, yes, we can. Let's work together. This is not a time for you to be going about. If in the first place, you see, the president has a right to tour the regions, to see what's going on. He has a right to do so as the chief executive, of the country. But timing matters. Okay, we are in hardship. We are going through difficulties. And so this is not the time for the display of a certain opulence. If the president
is going, that's what is happening.
If the president is going, he has an entourage.
Is that not a way of touching base with the people as well?
This is not a time. You have an entourage of so many Land Cruisers and V8s, over 20 of them. They are all going to be fueled by the state. This is not a time to do that. This is a time for us to do an introspection and to be brainstorming on how or what can be done to surmount the problems that confront us. As Bokman was saying, I had also penciled it down. The IMF can certainly not be a panacea to our woes. And it appears that in our country, we have a certain one-way propagandistic stomach direction approach to solving every problem. When we were we wanted to pass the e-levy, it was presented to us as the panacea to our woes. And then we had it and then realized that that was not a solution. Now we are creating an impression as if going to the IMF is a panacea. But if you go to the IMF and you do not cut the size of your government. If you go to the IMF and we continue to encourage wastage in the system, if you go to the IMF and we mine our gold and get only 5% royalties, if you go to the IMF and then we explore our oil and we get just about 13%, we are not able to renegotiate. To get, Gaddafi was taking 70%, said the oil belongs to us. If you won't give us 70%, let the oil be buried in the soil. So if we can't do all these things, and then we think that we are just going to borrow and that will be the solution, then we have lost it as a nation.
Okay.